Welcome to Power Up, the podcast that uncovers the unique challenges women leaders face today. Join your hosts Nat and Kristen as we dive into the tough topics and provide actionable insights you can apply right now. Don't forget to hit subscribe so you don't miss any episodes.
So I just apologise for mucking up this podcast and making us start again, which is what just happened. But I did want to articulate what I initially said better, which is that women do apologise more than men. However, we're not more polite or kinder than men. We just have a lower threshold for what we think is an apology-worthy offence. Because of this crazy world, we're socialised to worry so much about relationships and not step outside the lines and make sure we're always giving more than we're taking. So women only apologise more because we have so many more rules that we think we're breaking.
Welcome to podcast episode 73, titled Sorry, Not Sorry, and we are taking an in-depth look at sorry today and gender differences in sorry, when we should say sorry and when we don't need to say sorry. And your comments were backed up by research from the University of Waterloo, which in fact talked about those thresholds that women have and we've been socialized to have. And also psychological science found that women apologize more because we want to maintain relationships and social harmony, which is probably also socialized.
Do you remember the last time you said sorry unnecessarily?
Well, I am a Canadian, so I probably have said it 4 times already today.
I have a friend and we used to laugh with her. She's probably listening. We love you. We love you. But she is a total apologizer and it really helped us all. In all honesty, I think someone who's an over apologizer actually helps the rest of you learn because you suddenly catch yourself doing it.
Well, because you don't want to do that. Because you're like, why are you apologizing?
Yes, because you want her to stop because she doesn't need to apologize. Yes. And then you realize how much you do it. And I've been known to apologize to like lampposts and desks when I bumped into them. Yeah. And my worst is when I apologize when I bump into someone and it's a mutual bump in. We bump into each other. It's a no-fault bump. And I apologise, and the worst is when it's always a man, because if it's 2 women, we just get into a sorry frenzy. We're sorrying left, right and centre. Yeah. But with a man, they look at you and go, quite often, actually I've had one great response, but they normally go, it's all right. And you're like, I didn't bump into you. And then you get angry, and it's not their fault. Like, you created the situation where you I apologise for something I didn't do.
Well, because it's an automatic reflex to a situation like that. And then, to be fair, that would have been an automatic reflex to your sorry.
I know. So it's totally my fault. But one guy actually did say to me once, quite recently, don't apologise, you didn't do anything. And I loved that call out. And it was a total stranger with a mutual bump.
I love that.
I thought that was such a nice way of putting it.
Yeah. Culturally, it's a thing in Canada. We stereotypically, but also factually, excessively apologize. In fact, even in Ontario, a province in Canada, there's something called an Apology Act. And this states that an apology doesn't necessarily mean an admission of fault or liability. So they're like, go say sorry, but it doesn't mean you did it.
I wonder as well if it's a little bit of a social contagion, like, vocal fry when we all started talking. You remember, like, the Kardashians and everyone, like...
Nah, you're talking to, like, the worst pop culture person.
Vocal fry was when we went, like, hi. Like, we had that little, like, rumble at the back of our throats. Oh, yeah. And I wonder if it's another one like that, we used to say, sorry, and, like, and you just catch these words, and then they become this real reflex. And it's like breathing. You don't even know you're doing it, but you say sorry, and then it catches, and then we're all winding each other up. And it just becomes, in New Zealand and Canada, we say a slightly differently.
Yeah,
but we have a.
I think we go, oh, but yeah, sorry is a thing.
Oh?
Yeah. I can't, it's been so long. I don't know.
You say at the end of things, like, right. Oh, we say it at the end of things too, but it's a good day, eh?
And you guys just go, aye. But yeah, look, Canada's a thing. Even in Japan, apologizing is a common practice. It is really part of their culture because they are all about harmony. So their word of apology, their word that they use in Japanese is really rich, and it means more than just sorry. It's expressing gratitude, get someone's attention. So yeah, it's a gender thing. It's a cultural thing. And
do you know who doesn't have it though? Dogs. Do you know just came in, wrapped herself in all our podcast cords, caused mayhem, and sort of just looked at us like, and what?
She's got to be fair, she's got the most sorry eyes of any dog breed. She's a Cocker Spaniel.
So because we've had this debate. That's what led to this. We've had this debate recently. Our official advisor talked about a situation where there was an executive running late to a meeting, and she was like, should she say sorry? And her thinking was maybe not. And we ended up in this really cool WhatsApp chat about what are all the different perspectives on when you should and shouldn't say sorry. That's what sparked this, because then of course it led to multiple other conversations, and then you get obsessed with the idea, and so now we're talking about it. But when would you say sorry? In what circumstances do you think it's worth it? Because some people say never say sorry. I think you should.
Yeah, I am going to say hurting someone's feelings. When your words or actions hurt someone, a heartfelt apology is often the only thing that's needed to make things right. And, you know, we try and force our children to do that when they hurt one another, and it is not heartfelt, so it doesn't make things right. Remember lots of those scenarios. Remember when you had to say sorry to your sister, Nat? I mean, no one wants to do that. But a heartfelt apology when someone's feelings are hurt is gold.
Yeah, I think it's really powerful too. The other one I've noticed a lot more potentially since even COVID is senior leaders apologizing for genuine mistakes they've made in strategy. So, you know, we banked on this. We thought this was where the future was going, and it didn't. And that has now led to us having to lay off a bunch of people, or really sorry that this is the ultimately the decision was with me and I made the wrong decision. Recently at the Olympics, sorry, I don't want to cause a Canadian New Zealand rift, but your team did spy on our team for football.
Do you know what I keep saying? That wasn't a Canadian coach. Because it wasn't
it? Where was she from?
Doesn't matter.
Was she Kiwi?
Doesn't matter, but that is a very un-Canadian thing to do, is cheat.
Well, also because you were very, very good at football. But what I did love is that woman, who may or may not be Canadian, fronted up. She went home and said, I wasn't even aware that this was happening, but ultimately the buck stops with me and I'm taking responsibility. And I think there is something so powerful in leaders stepping up and apologizing. And in that case, I think it's a perfect example. She actually had nothing to do with it, but she recognized the accountability and how to build trust. So I feel like those situations, it's really important too. And I love seeing more of it.
Yes. And I'll just add a little sub sorry to that one is just professional mistakes. The theme I've heard through this is if you have had an adverse impact on someone else or a situation, that is a nice time to say sorry. And the sorry should be proportionate to that thing. When you make a genuine error at work, I was in a role and I lost $30,000 of that company's money because I made an error in Excel. And I made that error. Another time I said sorry.
This is therapy now.
One more time I'll think of.
I like it.
This is this lesson. I had an email chain going and I made a rude comment about this person that we worked with because I was really frustrated. They were not giving me the information I needed. And I felt the need as a junior to flex my frustration to be like, I'm not getting this because of this. And I remember saying something like, it's like pulling teeth, or you know that saying? And I had it in email. Sure enough, before you know it, this whole email thing had gone to her and she wrote a little joke back. Oh, am I like going to the dentist or something? And I was mortified. Both of those two professional errors were times where I genuinely did apologize because I had an impact on, first of all, someone's reputation and feelings. And the other time was I lost company some money, which wasn't ideal.
30 grand. Oof. No.
Yeah.
I'm sure people have done worse. And I think there's a couple of strings I wanted to pull from that. One is on that smaller scale, $30,000 or less. Is that the target? No. But in general, because I feel like we're in a startup, we make mistakes all the time. How long ago was it where I realized I'd forgotten to pay GST for ages? And I think one of those smaller ones, one of the best things about sorries is not necessarily using the words. Like, if you say, I'm sorry, that's great. Maybe better is saying, I was responsible for this muck up. I did not pay the GST. As a result, we now have less than $30,000, but more than $0 to pay. Yeah. And in future, what I'm going to do is X, Y, and Z. And I feel like when people apologize like that, for me anyway, it always feels far more authentic because rather than saying sorry, it's actually being incredibly specific about what went wrong, knowing what went wrong, your role in it, and how you're going to fix it. And there's something about that I feel like when you get that, it immediately diffuses it. And the second part I wanted to make is countering that with that big not hack recently with Cloudflare. And I watched this hilarious interview, and I do feel genuinely sorry for that CEO. That must have been the worst day of his life. He has earned $250 million in the last few years, so I don't feel super sorry for him on the topic of sorry.
Yes.
But I didn't feel like his sorry was genuine. When he was being interviewed, I could tell that he wasn't taking accountability, and I feel like he was a good contrast to that wholehearted accountability. Here's what we're going to do as a result. And I get why sometimes people feel like they can't, but you can tell, and it didn't simmer down the situation, I don't think.
I'm going to guess at what's happening there, and I do think that people who are genuinely sorry have empathy for others and aren't sociopaths, and I probably am going to...
Oh, God.
So I'm not diagnosing him. However, I suspect he lacks empathy because he lives in an insane bubble. He will not be working with a small business owner who has lost revenue for 3 days, have clients screaming at them, has called everyone back in the office. He will be so far removed from that world that he no longer has empathy for that world. And so he probably
isn't sorry.
No, he's probably not. He's probably really annoyed that it happened.
His threshold for apology-worthy
but
offences has gone up. Can I add one last one to this? And I'm curious about your thoughts. As someone who recently, we're both navigating working from home and then the odd in-town IRL meeting. I have turned up late to far too many recently. I've misjudged traffic. I've missed the bus. I've miscalculated, like all of that stuff, and meetings run over. I believe you should say sorry in that situation. And this is the thing that sparked all this, is whether or not you should apologize. I think it's incredibly rude to leave people waiting. However, I also think it's incredibly rude to turn up in a frazzle and then put it on them and be like, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. And then make them do the work of making you feel better about being late. So I am curious how you navigate those situations.
Well, I think you've suggested a sorry because number one, your empathy to the impact you've had on someone. You recognize time is precious. And secondly, you are suggesting that a short and genuine apology is sufficient. And I think back to what I was trying to articulate before is there's proportionality involved in sorries. And when you it is a small inconvenience of someone's time, and yes, that's not great, and you genuinely feel bad, I think it's probably proportionate for you to say, I'm genuinely sorry about being late. Thank you for waiting. Let's crack in, or can I buy you a coffee or whatever, and just move on with it.
Buying someone a coffee, that's my tactic actually, because you're like, it's a sign that you are willing, you recognize that you owe them one. But I agree, I don't think it needs to be a big deal. Yeah, but I do think it is worth saying, and now I've totally lost my train of thought about what else I was going to say on that, but whatever. When shouldn't we say sorry?
Well, to your point about the bumping dance and bumping into someone, I think you don't need to say sorry for existing. We don't need to.
Okay. I used to say that to my mum. Sorry for existing.
Exactly. We don't.
Sorry I was born.
Yeah, we don't need to do that. We don't have to apologize for being born, for existing, for taking up space, for having an opinion. Sorry, but let me just interject here. Sorry, can I just share my opinion? We don't have to apologize for that. Or we don't actually have to apologize for needing help. I remember when I had a mouse, I could hear the trap go off in the pantry, and I don't like mice. And it was screaming in the trap, and it was bopping around in the thing. And I put a call out on our WhatsApp channel for our street, and I said, someone please come and help me. And when she showed up, I was profusely apologizing for help. And actually, she was more than happy. She went in and she grabbed it with her hands. She took care of it. And she probably just wanted to thank you. She didn't need me apologizing for needing help. So I was grateful for that. But we do not have to apologize for existing in this world, for needing help when we need help, for having an opinion. We don't need to apologize for navigating up the street and accidentally bumping into someone. Like, we just don't need to apologize.
No, I so agree with you. And I think on that mouse front, I think I've been there recently, and I'm trying to think of the example, but you feel so bad that you want to convey how bad you feel, but how it's received is, oh, now I have to get this mouse and make you feel better about calling me over to get the mouse. And I think that's what I've done recently, being quite late to one meeting. I did the classic turning up in a flap and just feel and needing her to be like, it's cool. And I think that's wrong. I think like I should have, and now am thinking I'm going to try and take a deep breath before going in and just being really clear of, I'm really sorry for being late. Can I buy you a coffee? I owe you one. Let's move on.
And part of existing is that we are busy and we are trying to juggle a million things, and sometimes traffic happens, and that is existing.
Yeah, and I do think people, like, I'm very quick to forgive people for being late but I'm not if they don't apologize. Honestly, if they don't acknowledge that they've let me down, then I kind of get annoyed. The next one is, for me, is other people's mistakes. I think this is one that I think sometimes we can get confused with the overuse of sorry in what we do and don't need to apologize for. And this is a fine line, because we've just used a bunch of examples about CEOs and executives taking responsibility. In my opinion, that is their mistake. They are ultimately accountable and should be across that stuff. However, quite often something happens that's not our fault. Like, let's say you're on a project, and we used to do this with our last startup a lot. We have a success metric we're working towards, we have a goal, and we don't hit it. We don't hit that goal. And I found often early on, the team would be really apologetic, like they had failed. And I was like, this is nothing to say sorry for. We came together, we had a plan. The plan didn't work out. That wasn't a failing on anyone's side. That was just that everything's a bit of a risk. And I think we can sometimes apologize in those situations. Any last things we shouldn't say sorry for?
The last one is setting boundaries. We're huge fans of saying no, and we run a workshop that enables our participants to say no in a polite and professional and authentic way to our tone. And I think that's completely acceptable, that we can actually say no as we navigate through this world, and we don't have to apologize for saying no. Perhaps it's actually someone asking for something we can't give them right now. It could be expertise, it could be money, it could be time. We don't have to apologize for not giving it, for setting a boundary. We can actually just say, it's not the best time. Because my first inclination was, if someone were to ask us for a half-hour coffee to pick our brains on startup life, my initial reaction might be, I'm so sorry, we're so busy. But we could actually just start with, we're so busy.
Yeah, or I'd really like to support this, but I'm really busy. How else can I help?
Yeah.
That doesn't involve 30 minutes of my time and a trip into town where I'm going to be late and turn up in a flap and have to apologize about your coffee.
Not to mention, I mean, these are healthy, normal boundaries. And I mean, not to mention going into this whole gaslighting, toxic relationship type stuff where people do get trapped in that victim mentality and needing to apologize for everything. Like, gosh, that's terrible.
Well, that's sort of that extreme thing of what we talked about at the start of having to maintain relationships, and sorry being a way to try and navigate and keep relationships on track.
Yes, forget that.
I think, the setting boundaries thing, we do have an article or a couple of articles on saying no, so I encourage you to go to the website and look at that. But I do think the other flip side of this is, I was reading something the other day about community and how we are more and more individualistic and feel like we need to do everything ourselves or pay someone to do it. Whereas actually great communities is like, hey, Kristen, can you drop me off at the airport? And we're reciprocal in not at each time, but overall. And what I tend to find is when someone apologizes when they can't help me, I'm less likely to ask for help, because now it's become sort of an emotional burden and I feel bad for them. Whereas if we get much better at boundaries of going, can't help right now, ask me next time, then we've got this clear, kind communication that allows us all to ask for what we need without feeling like we're burdening someone or adding undue emotional stress to their lives. Yeah. So it's actually a real gift sometimes to not apologize, because it does drain the other person when they feel now bad or guilty.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if anything, I'm going to be taking note of my sorries this week as a Canadian.
I'm trying to. But then I keep missing them and I'm like,
But this is how change starts, is awareness. And we've done a whole podcast on that as well. I unfortunately can't remember. It's around New Year's, and it was like, don't make New Year's resolutions.
No, the savant is fallen.
New Year's, I don't know, I could guess the number right now, but it is really about awareness is the first step to behavior change. And so let's be aware of our sorries. You can read our article. It's on the latest article on the website. It won't be the latest by the time you listen to this, probably, but it's on our website, and it's all about what to say instead of saying sorry. There's lots of tips. And of course, if you subscribe to our newsletter, you get all sorts of helpful stuff like this in your inbox each week. And just for a quick quote.
Yeah, Kristen's quote corner.
Yeah. This is Benjamin Franklin. important dude, and he said, never ruin an apology with an excuse.
I love it. And
that's the emotional burden thing you were talking about.
Yes, I think that's great. And if you, am I correct in thinking it might be New Year's resolutions? No, it wasn't that one. I'm trying to find
It's like, don't make a resolution, do this instead.
Yeah.
So
no, was it about that time?
Yeah.
Was that the one?
Yeah.
Episode 43?
Yes.
That's the one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's about behavior change. And by us just recognizing how often we say it is the first step towards not saying it so much.
Yes.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
Check out powersuit.com and we will...
Well, sorry, we have to leave you here.
We'll catch you next time. Bye.
Bye.